This podcast is recorded on the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam peoples.
British Columbia, I've seen your mountains high, seen your pretty rainbows and your blue crystal skies, watched your winding rivers as they flow around the bend. To me you're not a stranger, you'll always be a friend.
Coming to you from the West Coast, this is Politicos. Today is June 25th, 2026.
I'm Scott Lundebaum.
And I'm Ian Bushfield. On today's show, David Eby and Carney face blowback over their plans to buy condos, and the Prime Minister might be getting a new home for himself if he knows enough rich friends.
This guy, I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I guess that's a smart way to do it. Programming note, I'm going camping for a couple of weeks, so given the Canada Day, Independence Day, depending which side of the Alberta referendum you come down on, holiday next week as well, and the fact these are slow news weeks, we're going to take at least a 1 week break, and I guess you'll see if you can find a guest for the following week, and if anything happens.
Yeah, still TBD on what's going to happen following week, but there's the slow period in the year, so may see about finding guests, may just take it off if nothing much is happening, or maybe we'll find a guest that's has a specific hook and something to dive into in detail that's maybe a little less topical, but that is all to be figured out.
Why don't you spend an hour talking about a highway between Vancouver and Prince Rupert and how stupid of an idea that is?
I mean, maybe. This is the in reference to a CBC story that hit, which came out today, and is just some random contractor in Prince Rupert was like, what would be a great idea is if the province would just build a massive highway up the coast, the part with all the mountains and fjords in it. And, I guess presumably I'd be the one paid to build it. And yeah, CBC just ran with it.
No, sorry, Scott, the exact quote is, who's going to pay for it? That's a separate conversation.
Amazing. Anyway, we had a good discussion in our Slack today on all the amusing aspects of that. So you want an invite to the Slack and discuss this and everything else, BC and Canadian politics? Support the show at patreon.com/politicos.
Yes. Let's start here in BC. The provincial government has quietly told Victoria and Saanich that amalgamation won't be happening anytime soon. The two municipalities had been slowly working towards a plan to amalgamate the city and district that anyone who does not live in the capital region could probably not draw the line of where they divide. Even people who live there, I don't think can.
Yeah, I grew up in North Saanich, and it's a kind of fuzzy idea. I have a general concept of the shape, but I could not tell you what the street is where that changes.
And so,
or streets, because it's a few different ones.
Yeah. And there's been talk about this for, a long time. The modern effort kind of is dating back a decade ago. There was a citizens' assembly where they brought people out from all across the region, or the two cities or the city and the district to be technical, to discuss the matter, gave them the capacity and resources to learn about the issues. And they came to the conclusion that amalgamation makes sense. Just, there's a lot of duplicated services, separate policing forces. There's just a good, strong argument for one single municipality here.
Yeah, also, the city of Victoria itself is pretty small. It's not a big municipality geographically. It has a large chunk of the population because it's the densest part of the region, but in terms of the actual amount of the Victoria area that Victoria covers, it's pretty tiny. So there's, I think, also just kind of a governance argument that, hey, rather than have this tiny postage stamp of a municipality that instead of the center focal point of the region, maybe, we should incorporate it all so everything can be kind of worked on together in a little more coordinated manner.
Victoria is about 100,000 people. Saanich is about 125,000 people from my quick reminding myself on Google. I was pretty sure Saanich was bigger. And just fine. Take two small mid-size cities and put them together into something a bit more concrete. And so both councils were moving forward with having a referendum this year, and they wanted it to be a binding referendum that this passes, the process starts going. But a binding referendum on amalgamation required sign off from the municipal affairs minister. So they asked Christine Boyle back in October, can we pretty please do this? And she said nothing for, 10 months? Actually, maybe a few less.
Not
because,
quite.
she sent the letter a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago. But, 6-8 months, no response. And then the final answer they got was, doesn't seem like you have enough information on the consequences of this yet. So,
Oh, you couldn't figure that out in like a weekend? Skim through what's on there. It's like, is this roughly enough or not? You had to wait until the spring of this year.
As someone who's written a number of letters to my MP or MLA, it is nice to know cities and local governments can get the same long wait time until they get a response that I get sometimes when I do get a response. It always amuses me when I get a letter from an MP back like 6 months later being like, thank you for writing me on this issue. And I'm like, it's not an issue anymore. The bill is passed or didn't pass, whatever. It's done. But yeah. Anyway, apparently municipalities get treated the same as citizens. And
just something for, the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Like, it's kind of right in the name, right? Surely they should be a little more responsive than your MP or MLA as just one of the 100,000 or so constituents.
It's also just insulting. Like, what? There was this entire time period to help clarify what information the government wanted from these municipalities to go ahead with it, and could have asked them to prepare it in that time. Like, I don't know. It sounds like both municipalities are going to go ahead with non-binding referendum, or as one person told me, they're going to follow the Alberta model of having a referendum about having a referendum.
We do not all need to be following the Alberta model.
No, absolutely no one should. But I do get I do get the idea. If you can't do the formal binding one, at least getting the political mandate to go back to the BC government and say, look, 70% of people came forward and supported moving ahead with amalgamation. Can we do it now, please?
If one was a little cynical, you could suspect that the municipal affairs minister wanted to drag this out to the point where by the time the request for information came through and they had a chance to start responding to it, it would be too late to make it onto the October ballot.
Possibly.
I have no idea if that's the case, but if it was the case, would it look any different than what has happened?
I just I don't understand the politics or the thinking from the government side. They're basically all NDP seats, pretty safe ones. Just it doesn't seem, of all the amalgamations out there, this is a grassroots bottom up one. You're the party that has Democratic in your name. Where's the danger of letting this go forward, especially to the provincial government? Just let them.
This is such an easy thing to just let carry on and completely wash your hands of politically. And yes, the minister technically has to sign off on it, but it does not take a political communications master to figure out how to go, okay, you guys want this. This is on you to figure out. We'll let you go ahead with it, but this is something for the voters of these two municipalities to decide, and they're the ones that are going to live with the consequences, whether or not they make the right decision. It's all on you. Have fun. Go at it.
I could maybe see if there was local First Nation pushback, but I don't think there is. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe I missed something here.
Arena Taisar. I'm pretty sure if there was, it would have made it in there.
Yeah, it's kind of mentioned by the minister that more consultation is needed on that. I would want to hear from, the Esquimalt and Wasonic First Nations themselves. They're, quite ready to put their names out there and speak up when governments go against their desires. But I don't know. It's a weird one politically for the government to just pump the brakes on, other than just fear of change, fear of like things happening that aren't like directly controlled by the premier's office, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming down on this too. This really feels like a case of like late governmentitis on the government's part, where they're just super gun shy on everything, don't know what they want to do, aren't comfortable letting things just develop outside of their control as well, out of, I don't know, some kind of fear they'd be blamed for it maybe if it goes sideways. But regardless, like, this is a case where they don't actually have to take any real political ownership of it. They can just let it happen. The people of those two municipalities can decide it, but they're feeling the need to just not letting anything go forward. And it's also, I think, counterproductive because it just, I think, reinforces that whole sense that this is a government that's just kind of stuck. Stuff doesn't really happen in BC the way it should be. There's no like forward momentum on anything. And if you ask the defenders of the government, they'll say, okay, you know, the government's now trying to like focus on some core priorities, and this definitely isn't one. But at the same time, like, how much effort does this really take to go through? You just give your nod, let it go on, and it's not like the housing ministry has been knocking it out. Housing municipal affairs have been knocking it out of the park with other stuff. Like, maybe if they spent years fighting with North Saanich over 60 homes, they could have read the letter a little quicker and gotten back to the cities on this.
I wonder if they're just worried about another like Surrey police transition fiasco, and they just don't trust municipalities anymore. And so they're like, you know what? We don't need the headache. Just slow it down even more. It's already a snail's pace. You can go tectonic plate movement pace. And one day, eventually, when we all die of heat death from climate change, we can amalgamate those two municipalities. But yeah, what a decision.
Yeah. This is definitely a loss for the government, because they took an issue which they didn't necessarily have to bear any political downside on and came away looking like losers on it, or standing in the way of local self-determination over, like, no point of principle or anything. At least with the housing, when they're getting in the way of interfering with municipalities and their decisions, there's like a matter of principle and a key like public interest at play here. This is just them blocking it for the sake of blocking it.
Well, they've not had a great week in government communications, as the fallout from last week's housing announcement, we should have predicted it. We were a little bit soft on this. You called it.
Yeah, I think I might have alluded to it might not go over super well. And yeah, it turns out it definitely did not.
Most of the housing plan has been forgotten. The one that everyone remembers now is that the government wants to buy up, using some mechanism yet to be determined, empty condos in Metro Van and elsewhere, and make them into affordable housing. That is now being framed at 100% as just bailing out the development industry.
Yeah, the rollout on this was not good. It got tucked into the press release and barely talked about. And like, if anyone knows anything about how the housing politics go, like, you could have predicted this was going to be a bad situation and cause some blowback and be easily framed this way.
Scott, who among David Eby, Gregor Robertson, and Christine Boyle know anything about housing politics from their years of experience?
Yeah, there's a few different thoughts I have on that front. One is that this is a sure sign David Eby has lost touch, because you go back to like 2017 version of David Eby. If the BC Liberals had announced this, he would be making the exact points the critics are making on this. But even when the NDP was fresh in office, he would have had enough sense of the reaction to such a thing that he would not have made this mistake. So, like, he's clearly been in the halls of Victoria a little too long to not have spotted this coming. And then on the federal side, when your main Vancouver area MPs are Gregor Robertson and tell Eve, two people are not exactly well loved on the like more populist housing side, because Gregor during his time as mayor, for all the good he did the city on like transportation and stuff, he was pretty asleep at the switch on housing and often was pretty tone deaf on the matter. And then your other MP was a notorious house flipper. Like, you're just not working with a lot of great personnel on this front to have like a real, ear to the ground sense of where the public is on these issues.
I'm still on the side of like, this plan could work. There could be a way that this doesn't suck total ass. But the biggest issue is we don't know what the actual plan or approach is yet. And they announced it with just this vague, we'll tell you how this works later, which allowed everyone to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, innovative financing, which is the sort of thing that raises an eyebrow or two.
Because the obvious solution is like, let the developers take a haircut and sell them at a loss, and there, boom, housing prices go down just from market forces alone. But
yeah, so in the cleanup attempt today, which both Carney and Eby did at different points, Carney, to throw the BC government under the bus, is the ones that came up with this idea, and Eby, agreeing with Carney that it was their idea, said that this was going to be focused on projects that were in foreclosure. So, if that's the case, like, yeah, they're less of a just developer bailout and more buying homes on the cheap when they're in receivership.
Yeah.
So, like, that's defensible, but they should have said that at the start.
Or made it its own announcement and not burned the rest of their housing announcement.
That too.
The $10 billion investment that no one is talking about.
Yeah, and also, like, the other thing is, if you've been around housing politics at all, you for years you could not mention that maybe we should build a few more homes without every one coming out of the woodwork with some like half-baked populist take of, no, there's actually more than enough homes, they're all just sitting vacant. All the government should do is solve the housing crisis and the homelessness crisis by taking those vacant homes and putting people in them. And now that they're doing that, the same people are losing their minds over it.
That's the thing. At the end of the day, if this gets people in homes, I view it as more positive than negative. But we're not there yet. So the additional details that Eby kind of dropped in here is not just buying those foreclosing ones, but buying them at discounted pricing and converting them to rent-own housing. So he's like, we're not subsidizing developer profits. We're just softening their losses and protecting the banks.
Yeah, so, I mean, this thing's been a mess on it. I think both the feds and the province have had a bad week as a result of this. But, at the end of the day, like, it's probably fine. Would probably not have been where I would have necessarily put the next marginal dollar in housing stuff, but for the reasons I said when we discussed this last week, and the stuff here about buying them when they're in foreclosure, it seems reasonable-ish, but hardly a knock it out of the park housing policy either.
Yeah, which I think is why they kind of wanted it to just be an extra footnote on the bigger announcement. In Eby's words this week, he said the federal government was enthusiastic about us announcing this before all the details were out. So Eby's trying to throw them under the bus for announcing a half-baked plan that they were working on.
I mean, that's not going to work nearly as well as it went the other way, because it's BC's idea. Hits a whole of a lot harder than, I mean, the other guys didn't get the comms exactly right on this.
We weren't finished the idea yet, and so they're selling you something we weren't ready yet. It's a sign they're all losing when they're explaining, right? In the grand, even if they'd put a price tag on it, on the announcement, it probably would have helped to be like, look, this is actually pretty small out of everything.
They did have somewhat of a price tag on it, but it was vague.
Yeah.
On what was involved. A little more details we do have on it that the total budget cap's going to be $1.45 billion, and they're targeting 2,200 units with that. So roughly 60K units, kind of what the budget has in store for that.
Which does sound a little bit below market rate in Vancouver.
It's a little bit below market. Also, for like the government paid for affordable housing, it's like not crazy for that. Those ones often end up coming in a little more expensive to build than just market housing, usually because as a government project, they layer on a bunch of additional requirements on it above and beyond what's the minimum the market has to handle on it. So like not crazy. There've been affordable housing projects that have come in around $1 million a unit, so like could definitely be worse on it.
All in all, not a good week, but it's the start of summer, so maybe people will forget. But for Carney, he can probably ride through this because the man is Teflon these days. Eby needs better stories than this, though.
Has he had a good one recently? Like, I can't think of a single one he's actually like landed a solid hit on. At best, he's gotten here are all the problems with the new leader of the other party. But the government's not had a solid win in a long time.
I'm just scrolling the government's press releases, looking for anything big. They're just like generic statements here and there.
I mean, the dams we talked about last week are probably the biggest thing.
Yeah, I am remembering that they did approve Okanagan Falls becoming a municipality, where I guess that referendum was okie dokie. Well, the one happening among, the two largest cities on the island needs more thought. But $1 million for a house is actually pretty cheap when you consider the Prime Minister's house could take $100 million to fix. And we are finally getting to the point where we will have the official plan from Mark Carney soon, with CBC having a couple leaks this week about
it's actually
what it will
scheduled
look like.
to be announced Friday morning. So by the time everyone's listening to this, we should actually have the details. But there have been a bunch of leaks and seeding the ground for the actual announcement.
Yeah, particularly a piece they put out today. There's going to be a design competition, like this is a high school project, and not just an RFP. So we'll have a design competition of private bidders to say what Rideau or 24 Sussex should look at. And the Rideau Hall Foundation will run a fundraising campaign to cover the costs because, the Prime Minister's residence shouldn't be paid by taxpayers.
This is also stupid. Oh, so this comes on top of Carney saying that he wants to get the building repaired and back to being livable in, but he was going to not live in it and let the next Prime Minister return to it. So he already did the obvious thing to do to dodge the political problems of spending money on the Prime Minister. Also doing this other stuff is ridiculous. I'm on several fronts. One, doing a design competition. I'm pretty sure it's a heritage building. Like, you're not exactly going to knock it down and completely change up the entire look of the thing. You're at the very least going to keep the facade and like maybe tack on a new wing to it. And is that what we want the competition to be? Is figure out the new part of the building that has to look more or less like the old part of the building, or the heritage people are going to throw a stink and potentially run afoul of the heritage rules on it anyway.
Well, they're the government; they can change the heritage rules, but you're thinking too small, Scott. We could put a UFC ring right outside, and it would do great things for North American diplomacy right now. Or we could be more Canadian and put a NHL hockey rink right outside.
One of the things mentioned in one of the stories on this is that A previous report on this recommended expanding the property. But if you look at it on Google Earth, you want to know what's on the four sides of 24 Sussex? You have Sussex Drive, obviously, and then you have River, French Embassy. Like, are we going to kit the French out to expand this?
We could cross the street and take over the South African High Commission. Maybe they'll just build some...
I mean, I think the RCMP would lose their minds about having a public road running through the property.
You just have to dredge and fill in the river and Governor Bay that's right around there and build out the little point. Hilariously, it's around the corner from Stanley Park as well. We have so few names in this country. So this plan is stupid and embarrassing and not a sign that we're a real serious country. Quite the opposite, in fact.
I mean, I think that bridge was crossed when we let the thing fall into such a state of disrepair that the Prime Minister had to move out because it was literally uninhabitable.
Well, he just didn't want to live with asbestos, mold, and rodents. Like
yes, also dead rodents and rodent dropping. Yeah, it was bad. It really was, like, beyond the point. Hell, it accumulated $100 million of deferred maintenance on it.
Which is also a wild number. It feels like you could rip it down and rebuild it for less than that.
You probably could.
It's not big.
Like, yeah. I mean, that's been the other problem. It's 34 rooms, so it's, like, not tiny, but compared to other official residences, particularly where there's also a sharing of some of the functions of state with them, it's pretty small. And it had definitely been an issue in the past of the inability to host even small functions with visiting leaders at the residence there. So, yeah, significant problems on there. I would be entirely fine with just tearing the thing down. It's not that interesting a building architecturally, and like, yeah, just let the heritage people complain. Like, they've already been coddled way too much in this country. So, screw them, knock it down, just build an appropriate building in its place, or, sell the property and move elsewhere. But, like, just build the damn thing, spend the money you have to. We're a G7 country. It's entirely reasonable for the head of government to have an official residence and that it be kept in good condition, and we should stop being so precious about this as a country.
I was actually expecting better from Mark Carney, of all people. Like, this is a kind of approach I wouldn't surprise me from a lot of politicians.
Oh, it was actually so both Stephen Harper and Jean Chrétien had considered the idea of fundraisers for this.
See, yeah, that fits. Mark Carney, I thought, would just like treat it seriously, but I keep forgetting. No, he's like cosplaying as a politician, but also is just one. Right? He's like trying to force himself into the mold, so he leans even harder into the politics despite his background, and hence you can get the Polyev comments calling him like a badly trained. It's like, no, he wasn't badly trained. He's just ignoring all his training and like experience to do what he thinks you're supposed to do as prime minister, which is stupid shit like this. And that's disenfranchised. It's disillusioning. It makes people cynical. Maybe not this specific thing, but
yeah, I'm going to disagree slightly. Like, if he was doing the traditional prime minister thing, he would have just punted it like so many previous prime ministers had punted it before. Like, the fact that he's actually taking this one on and making the necessary changes that are literally decades overdue on this puts him in a different class than all of those former ones. But it is kind of undermined by this.
It's a pretty low bar.
Dumb fundraising thing. And like, I mean, what's next? Are they going to sell sponsorships? Is this going to be the 21st Southwest Drive, the PM's Save On Foods official residence, sponsored by Irving?
It would be fitting for the history of this country.
Yeah, you can have the CN Tower and the CN House.
It's just going to be Roger's place. Roger's house. God, but like, he does no wealth. And so maybe a Mark Carney fundraiser or a fundraiser for Mark Carney's house that Mark Carney won't live in will go well for him. So maybe it's the best idea. I just think like you don't need to fundraise when you're the government because you have this magic thing that is called mandatory fundraising, like taxes. Could just do those.
Oh, so it's $100 million. That's like a toonie and like a nickel or two from every Canadian. It's literally pennies in terms of the government's overall budget. Just spend the damn money.
Well, they do want to spend some money up north as they are announcing the first projects being fast-tracked under the Building Canada Act. They will be in the Northwest Territories, and they are going to get a highway, a deepwater port, and a nuclear waste storage facility. Possibly.
So a little clarification on that, which is in large part the fact that Canada has some bad naming conventions when it comes to its geography. Well, first off, one of the two projects is in Nunavut, but the other one is actually south of Winnipeg in Ontario. But because for some reason the Ontarians insist on calling the western half of their province Northern Ontario, it gets called a Northern Project. But that one in particular, the Deep Nuclear Repository, is going to be... Sorry, the Deep Geological Repository for Nuclear Waste is going to be in Ontario between Thunder Bay and Winnipeg.
That's a big area, specifically in the township of Ignis and the Wabigoon Lake Ojibwe Nation.
Yeah, so this has been talked about forever. I have family in one of the other towns near-ish that area, and they'd been talking about it forever. It's been a continual source of debate. So, like, good on the government for just pulling the trigger on this one, because it is taking far too long to get that one going. Not that, like, nuclear waste is a huge problem. It's very small in quantity, because nuclear energy is just so damn efficient at converting the fuel rods into actual power that it's not a lot they have to get rid of, and they've generally been able to store on site. But getting a permanent repository is just a good thing. And we're going to need one eventually, so, like, good on them for pulling the trigger on this one. And it's also the Canadian Shield. Like, it's about as stable geologically as you can get on this planet. The rock's been there for several billion years in pretty much its current state. With, I guess it was a little more mountainous and before they got worn down. But, like, it's stable. It doesn't get more stable than that.
So basically, this is utilizing some of the legislation they brought in Bill C-5 that lets them fast-track things that the major project office is working on. The office had picked up or had gotten the application about the repository project yesterday, on Wednesday. So that's the fastest I've seen things move.
This is one of the few ones that hasn't been an existing project that had gotten fairly far along in its process before the major projects office got referred to them on it. So this is, I think it's actually like a little more how the legislation was envisioned to be used.
This does mean they have to go forward for speedy approval, but they aren't guaranteed going forward from here.
Yeah, but it does kind of like put the weight of the government behind getting these things approved.
And like it seems like these are all relatively, like, the nuclear waste facility is probably the most controversial of the three. But
yeah, we should talk about the other two before we end that a little bit. But so the other two projects are the Mackenzie Valley Highway and the Grays Bay Road and Port project. So these are one's in the Northwest Territories, the other's in Nunavut. But these are basically roads up to the Arctic coastline with port facilities attached that are basically there to spur economic development, connect to various resource projects, as well as create Arctic ports for both civilian and military use.
Yeah. The highway sounds like it would do a lot for people living in the north. 800-kilometer long, all-season gravel highway going from Wrigley, Northwest Territories to the Dempster Highway near Nunavut.
For a road over permafrost is not nothing. Like
no.
There's going to be some serious engineering work required just to make gravel roads work up there. Because it's not easy stuff to build over.
Yeah. It shaves 1,200 kilometers off the existing route between Yellowknife and Inuvik, which will work out to about 15 hours of driving savings. It'll still take 23 hours, but it's just a big bit of land to cross. So, good. Sounds great. Much more feasible than a road, even with the permafrost, much more feasible than a road through the BC coast.
I would not necessarily make that statement so definitively. Permafrost is just rough to build on in a lot of ways, and the Arctic has a lot of challenges on it. But yeah, like in general, I think these are both pretty great projects. I mean, the Arctic has been a concern for quite a while, and we've been talking for decades now about Arctic sovereignty, but you have to have people and infrastructure up there to actually be able to exert control over that way and maintain sovereignty. So getting the start of the infrastructure going on that is great. The fact that it's going to also unlock a bunch of economic potential up there, also solid. That'll hopefully make it, at least for the communities nearby the road, a lot more feasible to live up there and get goods in and out, because currently the lot of those communities are fly in, fly out, and the food has to be transported up by plane, and that is not cheap at all. So there's a lot of potential on that too.
Yeah, and the port and road are supported by the local Inuit community. It says there's Indigenous consultation happening with the highway, and I believe I'm on that. They say they're also working with the local First Nation on the nuclear waste facility. That's the only one where I could see there being more disagreement and fighting over it, but this did follow a long selection process of 14 years. I'm okay with them taking their time to get nuclear waste storage right.
Yeah, me too on that one. Because it has a lot longer tail than most of the rest of the stuff. Like, this is the sort of thing where the people who work on these sorts of projects have to try and figure out how to communicate to a civilization that might know nothing about radiation, nuclear technology, any of that stuff, thousands of years in the future after who knows what has happened, that you all need to really stay away from this place. It just requires a whole different kind of thinking on that, and that's a lot different than, a road or energy transmission infrastructure or anything else that, there may be some environmental impacts too, but like on the grand scheme of things, it's not that big, and it's going to be relatively short-lived. Then you always pull the stuff out afterwards if it really becomes a problem and remediate. This is a little different. Plus the fact that, like I mentioned off the start, that we've been getting by just fine for quite a while now. Decades with just storing it on site at the nuclear power plants until there was something in place. And yeah, made sure there was no rush on that particular one. It's not necessarily going to be the case for all the projects referred to this, because there is, I think, a general need to get stuff moving quicker in the country. And that also, I guess, kind of brings me to the other point I have on this, is that it's kind of interesting that it took them a full year to start designating projects with this particular thing, because this is a separate process from the Major Projects Office, related, but it is not the same. It's just a referral to the MPO. It's the much stronger. This is the thing we're putting the full weight of government behind, with a presumptive, this is going to go ahead, and now it's up to everyone to figure out how to get it through the approvals process where it meets all the requirements, but we're a little less on the fence about whether this is something we want to do.
This is going faster than BC, who is still yet, as far as I know, to designate any projects.
Yeah, they've not done a single one on either of the two bills they passed. So there's Bill 15, which drew most of the ire, and that's his own thing. But there's also Bill 14, which was a renewable projects one. You couldn't get a single win out of that by helping some renewable project along the line. Like, yeah, the environmentalists are not like happy with the government right now over, some stuff around LNG and pipeline expansion in the province. But like, you could be making a big show of, hey, here's a bunch of renewable energy projects we're helping get through and putting the weight of government behind. Isn't that great for the environment? And they're just leaving that tool on the shelf there. And also, like Bill 15, you could have gotten a bunch of wins on that one already and made it the whole legislation less of a sore spot. I mean, particularly, I am thinking of the Olympic Village School, which has spent a lot of time navigating the like city of Vancouver's overly complicated, way too slow, and just stupid process. I had to go back and like rework some of the zoning and approval stuff with the city because the plan changed. They wanted to add like a meter or two of height to the building.
But Scott,
something that is like
David Eby wouldn't want to make notoriously popular Mayor Ken Sim mad.
Yeah, or
you wouldn't want to go to war with a winner like that.
Or help along the thing that they have spent multiple campaigns now promising the people of Vancouver that they would actually build.
But how would they promise to do it in the next election if they built it today? It's disappointing.
I mean, at some point you actually need to start delivering for people, and the NDP's gotten pretty bad at that lately. So, yeah, it's interesting that this is actually the first thing kind of going forward. I guess Ontario's is their Bill 5. They've started making a few designations on that, but it's interesting that both the feds and the province have been pretty slow on the uptake of the we actually got to get stuff moving legislation they passed over a year ago now.
Indeed. Well, with this new, eventually built nuclear waste repository comes a nuclear energy strategy for the country that was announced from the federal government this past week. The headline of it is we're getting 10 new nuclear reactors someday.
Cool.
It's a great dream. I don't know how you're going to pay
hear
for
that.
it.
Yeah, so some of the information, obviously, a little more on that. New nuclear strategy. They're in this one going to be looking at kind of changing up how they do things and focusing much more on like a fleet-based process where they try and like use a standard reactor design that they just build a bunch of in sequence to lower the costs and start to get some economies of scale, which is, great. It's how France managed to build out most of their country's electrical grid on nuclear power at like a pretty reasonable cost. Is they just took one reactor and just built it a whole bunch of times all around the country, and that's a model that we would be nice if we would follow on this. And there's positive indications on that. Yeah,
and the first objective in the strategy itself is modernizing a cost-competitive CANDU design by 2030. And like historically, the CANDU reactor design is a pretty good thing for Canadians to be proud of. It runs quite efficiently. It runs on simpler fuel, so you don't need to enrich uranium as much, which reduces the risk of weapons proliferation. So you can actually provide CANDU reactors to countries that you don't want to get nuclear weapons because... I mean,
kind of.
They're still...
India.
Yeah.
Because, like the by-the-book use of it makes building nuclear weapons hurt. Make some changes to how you're running things. It can be used for that, but...
We're talking about nuclear reactors. It's not just flip this switch or don't do that, but... Yes, fine. Don't sell them to your enemies kind of thing, still. The general rule of thumb. But it's still a cool design, and updating that, I'm on board with. The idea of getting the second objective of getting 10 new large-scale reactors with 2 under construction by 2035 and 5 more planned or under development by 2040 seems... It's like, okay, sure, but who's paying for it? As far as we can tell and see right now, the cost of a kilowatt of nuclear power is significantly more than many other green energy options. whether that's wind, solar. I think even hydro comes in lower, although hydro has limited number of spots you can build it.
Yeah, historically, hydro's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Some of the latest ones have
Ballooned.
come in more pricey, but if done right, the technology is not too bad. Yeah, but nuclear is a little different, and yeah, I think there's definitely ways you could handle how you build nuclear reactors and how you regulate and permit them to get more cost savings while still maintaining safety, but a lot of work needs to go into that. But to get there, you basically do need high degree of standardization, a workforce that is familiar with the process and is repeatedly working on. You basically need to build a lot of them in succession, as well as probably look at some of the regulations around nuclear power and figure out what's a real safety benefit and what is just adding a lot of cost for very little gains in terms of safety. And the nuclear sector has quite a few of those, but it's the sort of thing that requires a lot of very detailed work to go over and figure out which is which.
Yeah, I like to say or think that nuclear energy is one of the few technologies we've treated properly like adults, where we have looked at this and said, this is a significantly dangerous thing. Applying the precautionary principle a little more aggressively than we often do is worthwhile. More people these days die from coal plants than from nuclear plants because
you get more radiation out of coal plants than you do nuclear plants.
And so obviously we don't want to compromise any safety. The most Canadian sentence in this thing is the fifth objective of streamline the regulatory framework to ensure projects are reviewed in an efficient manner without compromising safety, security, and environmental protection, all while upholding the rights of Indigenous people. Not easily said, less easily done. They are also hoping to attract private financing for these new builds, including from pension and sovereign wealth funds. Sovereign wealth funds, notably not private financing, but I guess they would be other countries' monies. And they would want to increase the share of private capital for successive projects. I don't know. I feel like energy is something we can just build domestically and have it on the Crown Corporation balance sheets.
I mean, I don't have a strong view. Like, if the Ontario teachers want to spend some of their absolutely gigantic pension fund on that instead of, shopping malls and airports in Europe and random other things, like, don't particularly have a problem with it, but I hardly think it's a requirement either. Yeah, wouldn't also surprise me if Ontario kits in a bunch of money for this. They're pretty enthusiastic about nuclear power, and they're already in the process of several projects in the province. So I could see them also showing up with some funds to carry this forward.
Yeah, Ontario's the obvious place to lean in because Doug Ford loves a big shiny project that might not make the most economic sense, but is, big and impressive and cool. The plan itself, though, here does say they want to see one nuclear deployment, including small modular reactors, operational or under construction outside Ontario by 2035, and a microreactor demonstrated by 2035 and deployed to remote communities several in following years.
Yeah, New Brunswick currently operates one nuclear reactor, and there has been some discussion. Well, they have one nuclear power plant. I don't know how many reactors are there. They have one nuclear power plant, and there have been some discussions about expanding nuclear in that province, so might be where you see the uptake on it. Other than that, I can't think they're the only two provinces currently operating nuclear energy in Canada.
Wiki and Google are telling me. There's 17 total reactors, 16 of whom are in Ontario.
Okay, I guess it's a single reactor plant then.
There are some smaller reactors, like the University of Alberta has a small nuclear medicine reactor.
RMC had
that's not what we're
a
talking
small
about.
one in the basement too of the with the chemical engineering department. Like, they do exist, but they're not the same as the power plant ones.
So, like every federal government strategy, nice set of words. Well, if you agree with it, TBD, where it goes, if it goes anywhere. The federal government didn't promise any money behind this, as far as I can tell. It was more like a white paper. Oh my God, the last line of this paper, I just scrolled it to the end, is, okay, let's go. And it's
Amazing.
in blue centered font. Thought it was a link or a joke.
Interesting. That said, this is a government that is not shy about dropping pretty large sums of money on infrastructure projects and nation building projects. So I could easily see them coming in later with some money behind this one. The fact that it's not necessarily announced up front, I don't think under this particular government takes away a lot from it. There are definitely a lot of governments that Canada's had where I would be a little more critical on that front. But I don't know, if it's a year from now and no money's been attached to this, I'll certainly reconsider that one. But like at the moment, I think Carney has a little bit of benefit of the doubt on the funding stuff, because like I said, they're not shy about spending money on these kinds of initiatives.
Well, they want that reactor design ready by 2030, so clock is ticking to move that forward. So yeah, TBD. But as they end the paper, okay, let's go.
And that has been Politicos. Find links to everything we talked about at politicos.ca. Support the show and get access to our exclusive Slack channel at patreon.com/politicos. Our intro music is Beautiful British Columbia by Serge Plotnikov. Politicos is a production of Leg and Boot Media. Audio editing provided by Jesse Woodward at listener-supported CHLY 101.7 FM in Nanaimo. Learn more at chly.ca.